Good afternoon, everybody. I want to call our special joint meeting to order with Shoreline and North Shore Board of Commissioners for the RFA Planning Committee. Could you please stand for the pledge? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amy, could you do roll call for us, please?
Good evening, Commissioner Tim Fisher,
Yes.
Commissioner Ron Pedwood.
Here.
Commissioner Ken Callahan.
Sure.
Commissioner Rick Webster,
Here.
Commissioner Josh Pratt,
Present.
Commissioner Tyler Byers. Chief Matt Cowan,
Here.
Legal Counsel Brian Snur.
Present.
And I'm Board Secretary for North Shore, Amy Oakley.
Thank you, Amy. Is there any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to approval of our meeting minutes from last meeting, May 6th.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
It's been motioned by,
Rick Webster.
thank you, Commissioner Webster. Do we have a second?
Second.
Who said second?
Josh Pratt.
Josh. And seconded by Commissioner Pratt. Any comments or changes? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, our planning meeting to establish RFA between Shoreline and North Shore. Discussions for tonight. I thought that we had said last meeting that we were going to start with how the board may look. And I thought maybe I'd throw it out for suggestions, comments, numbers. What does North Shore have in mind? What are your visions for what a board may look like?
Have you thought about it? I've just spent a little bit of time on that, and I think it's gonna have to be a 5-person board, but it'll probably get there by attrition is what it'll have to be. That's the way I look at it. So, and that seems to work the best. Research I did with our other RFAs, that's what they done. Yeah, the only thing that we need to be cognizant of is cities. Our cities want to be involved also, so I don't know what we haven't contacted them yet to see how they want to be represented, or if they want to come to our meetings and be part of this process. So
I think attendance at the meetings is certainly a good thing. I think if you're looking at the governance, are you expecting that elected council members would sit on the RFA board, or continue to have either district elected commissioners or at large elected commissioners? Or
I think that we need to find out what their input would be.
Okay.
With respect to governance. So I've had a couple conversations, but I haven't. And with the city of Kenmore, and I haven't gone any further than that because we're just starting here, but it's a question that should probably be brought up with the city councils of Lake Forest Park and Kenmore to see how involved they want to be. So
I'm not fully decided on the size of the representative or of the board, but think that we should find some way to have representation from both sides of the district, if that's at all possible. I don't think that the city council members need to have input. I think we should be independent from our city council. Granted, we're always gonna want their input and
Right.
like listen to what they have to say, but as far as them having representation on the board, I don't think that's necessary. So I think, having a slightly larger board, I think we can go up to 7. Is that accurate?
You can go up to 125.
There's no limit.
On the RFA, there's no.
Only
They have to be.
Let's try not to go that long.
Yeah, might get
Fire
close.
district limited stuff.
Okay,
And it doesn't necessarily have to be an odd number. I believe Brian mentioned last time that there was an RFP,
Well, you do sound fire
even,
yeah,
city. fire district.
and it hasn't been a problem. So that's something just to keep in
Yeah.
mind.
Just FYI too, I did a little bit of research and then Brian corrected me. If the board, RFA board members are fire commissioners from the 2 different districts, we can drop down to a board of 3 of each, because the RFA is the employer, not the districts. And because I was looking at the RCW and I was like, oh, if you don't have any volunteers, then you have to have a board of 5, but we could drop down to a board of 3 on each side. And again, I think through attrition, I'm not saying that right off the get-go. Yes, it could be a total of 6.
Start with the 10
Um,
that we have and attrition down to.
Or you could have less than 6 and just, the district's board of 3, you could have 2 that are active and 1 on standby, or, it wouldn't have to be an active member of the RFA board. But I don't know what that commissioner would do, except for step in if there was, if you couldn't make a meeting, then you maybe have somebody step in. I'm not sure if that's all that productive. One question I did have though is if the districts are still electing commissioners, and would the RFA just cover the election costs and all of that then?
Yeah, they're gonna include the RFA plan that the RFA will cover all the costs.
Okay, that's kind of what I figured, because the districts themselves wouldn't be the taxing entity anymore. Okay, all right.
Good question.
You go to a 3-member board that requires another vote, but people can just do it on
It would take a vote to go to
that.
3. Okay. Could you have 5 and then just populate the RFA board with less than 5? Like what I was just,
Yeah, as a practical matter, this legal matter, it's not supposed to work that way, because when you have a vacancy, board has 90 days. County council has 90 days to fill it, the governor has the right to fill it. We haven't seen any governors appointing fire district commissioners, so chances are they would just remain vacant, nobody would care, but legally, if somebody cared. I don't know how it would be an issue, but somebody raised a fortune to fill a vacancy, I suppose. That person. So that's right, it's a practical matter, probably works, but it would be cleaner ultimately too.
some reason I thought from our last meeting, there wasn't an option of having the 10-member RFA board. 5 and 5. And 5 would be elected from the existing North Shore side, and 5 would be elected from the current shoreline side.
We could set it up so it could stay that way, or would it become at large after the next
You
election?
can do it either way, so, I mean, you could start with only 10 governing, all 10 serve on the governing board. And then if you look at some of the sample plans, so gradually reduce down to 5. You could do that type of approach, make them all at large, so then in future, if you have 5 members at large, they could all be short, they could all be for North Shore, scattered. That's these votes. Or you could have the 10-member board. Just stand member board moving forward until you explore bringing another jurisdiction in, then go on 15-member board, then you look at that type of reducing. So you get through the RFA election just with the 10-member board, and say, okay, this is going to be 10 members, let's go to voters in each district, reduce to 3.
it would take a while even through attrition to get down to 5 with the terms and everything. It'd take a while. Yeah. One of the things it seemed to me was that at large was from a practicality standpoint, was a lot easier to manage, but that wouldn't guarantee geographical representation long term, and so I didn't know.
For me, that's the first question that I think that we should answer is, do we find value in having geographical limitations on where the commissioners come from? And I think if we do think that we want them to be geographically located, then we can move from there, or if we don't, then it can just be another. So I think that's really the heart of the question right now, do we have some sort of geographical, whether it's the current fire districts have now, or if we did commissioner districts or something different, or do we think that everyone can be in one work?
I agree with that.
I have to see that.
Oh, the district, commissioner district seems like a bad process or a hard process.
It's a little more cumbersome.
So doesn't sound feasible, but. Yeah. So
I'm not sure why we would do commissioner districts and not, if we wanted to do that, I would suggest just staying as the fire districts. If we needed geographical representation, if over time, if we went to at large, there's the potential, just like, Brian was saying, you could have 5 from here and none from shoreline, or it could be mixed. It could, who knows where it could be. But that would be, I think logistically, that would be easier to manage, because then you just do just be one election. It wouldn't be separated out fire districts and all that. But then you potentially, it would take years to get there probably, but you could potentially lose again, because you're talking about through attrition and so forth, and it would take quite a while before whatever, smattering, occurred. But
What I always encourage towards what happens geographical representation is think about your own district, right? North Shore didn't always have the city of Kenmore, right? In some way, Kenmore annexed it to the district. There's no Kenmore representative guarantee, yet the district still funded. So I find, in my experience, cities are far more geographically tight. They can't let go, or your fire district. Large portions of your district probably don't have a commissioner coming from, but they still get the same service because you have one job, right? And that's providing fire service. So the geographical element seems less critical in fire district.
It would seem that way, but one of the sticking points with the contract for service with Shoreline was from the city of Lake Forest Park, and they wanted to somehow ensure that their voice would continue to be heard. And they've always, at least in my time on the board, had a little bit of frustration at the fact that they've had no representation from their city on the current North Shore board. So further diluting that could cause issues with citizens of Lake Forest Park.
Another model that's out there, so Puget Sound Fire uses for other contract agencies, not voting position. So they're guaranteed representation. They don't.
But I like the idea of somehow maintaining some geographic representation. I think that specifically Lake Forest Park, like I addressed, but also Kenmore citizens are gonna want that, and I think that will be borne out by the citizen feedback that we get eventually.
I think it'll be easier to pass the RFA in the Lake Forest Park if we have a geographical representation.
Could you repeat that, Rick? I couldn't.
I said, I think that we would have a easier time voting it in if we had a geographical representation.
How do you guys feel about that?
Rob?
Well, I came in thinking a good number was 7. I like the idea of making up the board with fire commissioners. I like the idea of having representation from any group that wants, the city group that wants to have a non-voting member sit in on all the meetings and give all the input that they want to give. I think that's a healthy way to do things. I have seen fire districts
not fare so well when governance is placed in the hands of other politicians. I can't say politicians, because we are, and that's politicians, but in the hand of a group of people who are politicians and who don't know the fire service and what we do. We're unique in a lot of ways in how we work and how we service for citizens. We're held to a higher standard than one of the mill politicians, I guess. And I like it. So I'm comfortable with 7. I go 6 or 8 or whatever. I'm not on a number. That's just the number that I was looking at. Thinking of it in terms of keeping everybody in one homogeneous pot, and you're allowed to do that if and still accomplish the idea of getting input from city by using the non-voting position. And I don't like the idea of splitting our district half for voting purposes. I don't think, I mean, we're pretty much one big happy family now. And I think that the people in all areas are, at least from what I heard, are totally happy with the service that did it. Now, I understand that Lake Forest Park feeling like maybe they're not getting representation. But I think that can be accomplished with having them be a board member of one county or another. That's where I'm from.
Yeah, I also agree that 7 would be a good number. And getting the 7, we have some natural attrition coming up in the next year or 2. And once you get to 7, then that would be the start of the joint commission basis. I think that would be a good way to start it, and then you will have that. For both sides would be represented. I think that's important.
How would that represent both sides?
I'm sorry.
How would that represent both sides?
Well, you start out with 10. Right now. There's some natural attrition. Next year, numbers down. And then once it gets down to us, I'm using 7 as an example. We have 3, 4 and 3 or whatever would be the numbers. I'm not sure how that would fit. And then that should work out fine, I would think.
But that would be true for a few years until there were
Yeah,
new
right.
elections, and then it could be all shoreline or all in more Lake Forest Park.
I think it might be important to have the geographical representation, especially if Lake Forest Park is, wanting to have that input and seat on the board. I guess one question would be if we remained at 5 and 5 on each of the different districts, and we wanted to populate with 6 or 7 or 8, what do you do with those extra positions? You were talking about legally.
I mean, so I'm Commissioner Fuller, only 3 are appointed
To the RFA.
What interest I have even volunteering, maybe I'll have 1 meeting a year,
As a commissioner.
First year, probably just wind up things, but after the first year, it's like the fire district probably only needs to meet once a year, maybe meet monthly. Their agenda is blank, but there's nothing to do. So what incentive would a citizen have to run for a fire district commissioner position if they're not also there to be on the government board, right?
So
Can you rotate them through into the RFA board?
Yeah, you can, be as creative as you want, but it would be, if you had a 6-member board or a 7-member board, there's gonna be 3 or 4 commissioners that either get elected or get appointed that aren't really representing the citizens at all. They're not.
I guess I'm a little confused, but back up. So I thought I heard you say just a few minutes ago that we could have 5 and 5.
Yeah.
So 5 North Shore commissioners, 5 shoreline commissioners, and all 10 can serve on the RFA board.
Correct.
Is that accurate?
That's great.
Okay.
The question was, what if you had a 6-member RFA board, you still had to have fire district?
Yes, correct.
Those other 4 people do, would you even be able to?
That doesn't make any sense to me.
wanted to do that.
That's how.
I know you.
So-
You kind of. Steering away from the commissioner district, I'm not a huge fan of either, it is adding complexity, but. You know, but it does solve the problem, like, I don't know how how the population is, if you hire somebody that. Draw lines on a map, and maybe Lake Forest Park would be in one of those districts, Kenmore. Or Kenmore, you know, so it does work to maintain a geographical separation, but. There's smaller districts, so there can be a situation where one district has somebody that's run commissioner.
Or basically two districts.
Yeah, I mean, the 10 member board.
The lines are already drawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could either go 5 and 5. Or we could go 3, if we're not gonna have any lame duck, you know, for lack of a better term, commissioners. Or 3 and 3, but going to 3, we'd have to do an extra vote, correct?
And what you could do, you go 5 and 5, and then. For a year or two, then you could say, and then we're gonna move. We're gonna reevaluate, if we move to a 6-member board, that would be contingent on both districts passing. Resolution, otherwise.
To drop to 3.
I mean, an election, you could, you know, hey, we're gonna move to 6. North Shore voters say, no, we don't wanna go to a 3-member fire district board. And.
To do that, we have to
You
do an
and then
election.
so you end up with 5 commissioners, you have 3.
The
voters are gonna see it, so.
But
The North Shore situation, in that scenario, the North Shore situation, you would then be in the situation, those 2 commissioners, nothing to do probably. Right.
But yeah, so-
The voters.
to do this, you have to have a election to reduce from 5 to.
Or you could set it up as a 10-member board, work on the legislature the next 2 years to get a reasonable way to reduce the size before. It seems like it'd be a no-brainer legislative. It's just.
Yeah.
Get that done.
Nobody's pushed it yet.
Yeah, nobody's trying to do.
So what I'm gathering is that we feel there's some value in having a separation between the North Shore and the shoreline, so. Now
The geographical representation. Yeah.
So the least amount of difficulty with moving forward, would just be the 5-5, right? 2 boards, and that's what would go forward, and then that could be revisited if we felt like we want to reduce it later.
That would probably be the easiest way. And the other trigger here is that there's the potential that Bothell will want to come on board anyway, have to reevaluate anyway. Correct? I mean, that would be the board making a decision at that point of what that government, and that would not require a revote on the RFA if we have the language correctly written for this current plan.
It would require a vote in off.
To join the RFA, right? But this governing body would define what that looks like.
Yeah.
Well, and that might be the time to say, okay, we're gonna do whatever we're gonna do.
So we're gonna form this RFA, and then it has to go before the voters for both shoreline and North Shore.
Some majority of.
Okay, so I think
As you
with
can
the
take a super
separation
for
like
the-
we're talking about, separation like we do with 10 members, I think that's the easiest way we can get it passed through to
Okay.
start off with. I think that's my feeling. So
Everyone's represented.
everybody's represented. It would be, and help push this through. And then we can make the changes after the RFA is formed.
I understand on the North Shore Board, there's gonna be a conflict of interest, so. Timing wise, you could potentially lose one of your commissioners.
Well,
Hold on,
okay.
hold on.
All right.
I know, just, thank you. He's biting.
Right.
Good job. Sometimes you gotta.
I know.
So you could potentially be losing one. Okay, so that drops the group down to 9. We are losing one at the end of next year. So that drops it down to 8, 4 and 4. That's another way to look at it, if you guys hadn't thought that.
Take
Yeah,
a,
to go to a vote.
yeah, I'd have to take a vote to permanently reduce the board from 5 to 4, right?
Well, you can't even reduce fire support forward. That's.
That's in 5 or 3 or 7.
So we have to reappoint that position
Okay,
for the rest of it.
all right.
Can I say? Okay.
I'm timing.
All right, so the one person that North Shore would lose may not have a conflict of interest next year.
Okay. I said could.
Yes,
Timing
depending on,
matters.
and that's exactly right, depending on the timing. So that might not be
We have
an issue,
pending retirement or something?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
I don't know what that's like.
7 seconds.
I'm proud of you.
Okay, cool. All right, so what, that I think is having the 5 and 5 to push this RFA through. I think that's a good starting point for governance.
Okay.
Are there strong objections from Shoreline to that model? I don't want to.
I'm good with it.
Mr. Schnur, any like major challenges we're gonna face?
No, I mean, it's simple, benefit. Both sides feel they're being treated equally, that's simple. There's probably gonna be naysayers out there that say, why don't you take people to our fire department? And it's gonna be more expensive, particularly because of the size they are faced, you'll have the enhanced compensating, so you'll get those arguments. Other than that, and other than being the chief of 10 bosses instead of 5, but you're used to that already.
We'll just be
Likewise,
all in one group.
No comment.
That's why it doesn't change from the 2 districts.
One meeting, not 2.
And the fact that we'll be
Well,
able
actually,
to,
it'd only
once the
still be 2.
RFA is formed, we can talk about governance and make the changes
Yeah.
easier, but trying to get it formed, I think that's the best. We can get it voted through faster with separation.
Is there a way to, in the vote, like say we just want to have set soil through from each side, when we go to the voters, can that be included in the vote that they're voting for, or does it have to be a separate reduction of commissioners?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't go 3 to 40. Check point out. Volunteers.
Could you, if we were gonna drop to 3 and 3, could you make them contingent on each other? Like, because if one side,
You
That-
are
that-
really
that-
pushing this 6, aren't you?
I'm just
Just saying.
asking.
It is a lot, 10 seems like a lot, it seems like it's probably too much.
17 would be too much.
16 would be okay.
Will the new RFA board members have a staggered term, or do they all start?
They would have the identical term.
Whatever.
They have commissioners.
That transfers?
They would. Well, certainly, simple.
It is the simplest and I agree with all the comments, actually. You know, it's the simplest and it's probably got the most popular support from Lake Forest Park, Kenmore and the Shoreline. So I think that's all really good and I can deal with 10.
You have been.
So, sounds like we have a
So
TA item here, right? Board size.
At least with 5 and 5, we've got equal representation. I think that'd be great. And then, put some kind of clause in there that maybe 2-3 years down the road, we revisit this. Is it working? Do we need to reduce? I don't know. No, you don't get a say. You have to just deal with the 10 of us.
That's not what I was gonna say.
Matt, did you have something you wanted to add?
just that it may not be 2 or 3 years before we have to revisit this with Bothell.
Right,
Bothell, it's Bothell.
Yeah, but I'm just, yeah.
It may not. I'm not gonna hold my breath because I may turn blue and, yeah, we'll see. So Bothell's not on the table at the moment,
No.
North Shore and Shoreline, yes. I really think that that's what we need to focus on.
we're looking at 5 and 5. We're gonna lose, I wanna make it 2 next year. I can be reelected, so whoever's not running next year, there'll be somebody running in its place.
Mhm.
That's all there.
What did it sound?
I think that was really fun. I also wonder what happens if there's a tie vote. That, what's that bridge of Egypt?
Well, then we call Brian and say, help.
Failed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if I would think, I would want it to fail it, that, because that means that we haven't, I either haven't presented a proper plan, or there's been something that is not gotten, in fact, with a 10-person board, even a 6-4 vote, that seems too divided to me. I would rather have, most of the time we're 5-0 or 4-1 type votes for the most part, so. So I don't have a problem with that failing.
I don't think I've seen anything other than unanimous vote. In complaints.
Yeah.
5% of the votes. Yeah. 5 are from the same district. By are just. Fire service decisions. Pretty straightforward to get buildings.
Yeah.
There's exceptions.
Yeah. We got,
Moving right along. What's next on,
Are you gonna take the lead on drafting the final language? Do you want me to take the lead on drafting the final language?
I can do that, minimize
Okay.
the cost.
Help Brian.
Oh, I'll write it and then give it to you to take a look at.
Much easier to scroll and create.
Perfect.
I love him.
I've heard that before. Okay.
Okay, wow, that didn't take as long as I thought it would. And then having the cities, if they want, a non-voting input type.
You know.
I mean, they're welcome to come to any of these
Right.
meetings and have input. I think we would all welcome their input. If they feel they're not having a say to the meetings. And maybe we can find some way to encourage that.
When we were going through all our changes and deciding on our contract for services, we did invite the city councils to be at our meetings, and once things smoothed out, they found it wasn't worth their time to
Right.
show up, because most of the time we run pretty smoothly.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly, and it's not something that they really have a stake in like they did before, where they wanted to say so, I would say with all 3 cities, encourage them to come, especially if they, and actually next week we're having a dinner with our city council, so. Just sit down and talk, I don't know what the agenda is, I haven't seen it yet, but. Yes,
Does it make sense to at least create the potential for an advisory position should the city council want to sit in and like have a non-voting advisory position?
It depends on the message you want to send. So, if you sound fire, we just add we do it to the bylaws, so it's not in the plan. Land use system animals bylaws, so it's written for messaging. If you think the city we support this because we have this option in the plan, put it in the plan. If you don't think they care, then I would put it. I try to keep the plan as basic as possible.
okay.
You don't want to put stuff in there that you forget about. Okay. You do it with your bylaws. But it's really a message issue for.
anything else, any other input? Okay, we have revenue sources and funding planning, do we want to dive into that, or?
One thing I would maybe
Oh, okay.
the background,
Go
and
back to the back.
I went
Thank you.
way too far. Yeah,
I
but
looked at it after Brian
yeah.
sent the rest of the stuff and.
Yeah.
Just went, yeah, okay.
probably delete everything until the last.
You were really spitting the words down.
I was trying to frame how we got to this place. I was thinking about background of like how we got to this point. But it looks like we can delete all of that except for like the last paragraph or two.
If you look at this, those message issue, if you don't have that, it's a background statement plan, you don't want to. They does it, so. Why think outside the box? I think it's useful because if you've got citizens here, look at, what are we doing this?
Well, that's why I wrote it, was just to,
It's 20 years from now, to be a historical, but why, but it's still historical. Yeah, it'll be historical.
I'll be historical.
I didn't have a problem with the length of that.
Oh, okay.
It's just, you know.
No.
Whatever you want, see whatever message you want to say, just for why.
What are your thoughts as far as getting this part of it out in the public? We,
I don't have a problem. Well, it's up to you guys. I was just trying to capture what we, for that exact reason, is that somebody's gonna look at this and go, why are we even doing this? I was trying to write some narrative there as to how we got to this point. So it'd be up to the board as if you want to disseminate this, or if you guys liked it or not, or if there's areas that you want me to rewrite or edit or whatever.
I think it's a great start for our communication to the public. It should be put out probably, and with a link to it on the
On the page,
Yeah.
yeah.
and what about even getting it, do we have like a North Shore News or anything like that, or Shoreline News that?
We got Shoreline News.
We have the Shoreline Area News, and then there's the Bothell Kenmore reporter,
Yeah,
as far as local papers.
it would be good to say, hey, we're doing this, this is why we're doing it. Just another way to get it in our neighborhoods. Not a bad idea.
Is Lake Forest Park included in the Bothell Kenmore News?
I don't know.
Oh, no, it's Shoreline. Shoreline.
Oh, that's right,
Shoreline
Shoreline,
covers
yeah,
it.
covers Lake
So,
Forest Park.
you know, we can contact, I don't know who would do it, but get it in the local things.
Michelle can do that, can't she?
Yeah.
And then I was
And then-
looking on the website and I have not yet seen, and perhaps I've overlooked, any link or anything for the RFA talk.
No, I haven't done it yet. I wanted to make sure that I didn't want to just put stuff on there without approval from the board. And like this, because I agree, this would be something that if you guys liked this, to put that on there. I didn't want to overstep.
I'm good with it being on.
What's that?
It's a good promo.
Oh.
Let's,
Public.
Here's,
I just didn't want to assume or overstep.
this would be
So-
something, if you clicked on the RFA tab in our site, have this come up.
Yeah.
And then,
And it's thorough enough to head off questions.
yeah, well, it'll
but there
help.
still needs to be a tab for questions and comments.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes.
But this is a good starting point.
Okay.
And then also announcement of our meeting dates and stuff should be on that budget too, so people can participate if they want to.
Okay.
So going back to meeting dates, thank you, Rick, for bringing that up. Amy had sent out RSVP for all of our dates. I gave her some feedback. Was it September? September, our third Monday meeting. There'll be some of us that'll be attending a conference in Las Vegas. And I thought some of you were going. Yeah, so we're either gonna have to.
Can we move that to the week? Can we move it to the week before?
Conference, not downstairs, conferences upstairs.
No, that's,
So we're either gonna have to look at moving that date or just not having a meeting in September. So keep that in the back of your mind, but we've got meetings scheduled June, July, and at least August, I believe.
One meeting a month.
Yeah, and if we need more, maybe we can see where we can fit them, but at least this is on the
and
schedule.
the next meeting, which is gonna be the 17th of June, will be at 61, correct? So, because the way it came through, it said 4, So I want to make sure that it's taken care of now.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's good.
Amy sent out some dates and stuff and, with different stations. Wait a minute, all my scribbles here, I wrote something different down and no, it's been changed. Chief was supposed to say something at the meeting.
June
Okay.
17th.
I thought.
You maybe did. I was over in.
Oh, that's right.
Well, she-
I said that we were gonna be here and then back to.
Yeah.
Okay,
So every other. meeting-
yeah, the plan is to, seesaw back and forth.
What, the one I missed when I was doing the RSVPs was July, so what date was it on? Was that the 15th or the 22nd?
Oh, very cute.
15th, okay. For some reason, when I hit it, I think I hit not, so, thank you.
Just FYI on the July meeting, I have the Woodway Council meeting that night too, so I'll have to be short. On that night, just FYI. Guys don't need me.
Is it virtual or in person?
I prefer to go there in person.
More personable.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
okay.
but that doesn't start till 6, so I'll be fine until about 5:40.
Well, we'll see what we have to cover. Maybe we can pick something that is a real quick topic. Yeah. Okay, background needs, those are gonna go on the website. And to the newspapers.
Mhm.
Okay. Who am I?
Thinking on revenues.
Yes, thank you. Revenue sources and funding planning. Matt, you're more familiar with revenue sources for all the groups. Am I putting you on the spot or do you need time to?
What I think at some point, what I'd really like to do is, come up with go through the budgets and come up with a draft of what it's gonna look like together. But the big question is for you all is we need to determine what levels of reserves and things that we would like to have. And because in my opinion, we will have more reserves than we need. And I can come up with a draft for that as well and present to you guys if you guys are on board with that. As to what I think, but this is going to be a decision that before I can finalize, the budget, because what those reserves will drive a lot of, what our equivalent levy rates will be. I think the plan is to, we have very similar fire benefit charges right now. They're both districts are being managed by Neil Blindheim. So combining the two that shouldn't be a problem at all. It's just gonna be combining the databases and all that. The only question I have is, we have a difference in sprinkler discount, I think is what it is. That's the only difference really that's between our fire benefit charges.
Chief, why would our reserves need to change, the percentage of reserve?
I believe that there's some extra reserves, in a couple of different pots. But one of the things that we did do a good job of this year was saying we're gonna go to 10% and 5% for rainy day reserves. So that part's not a problem. But well, for example, I'm a little unclear as to like the left one liabilities reserves. I think North Shore's carrying more than is needed. So there might be some savings there. There's a couple I can come back with. I wasn't prepared tonight, to talk specifics, but I believe that there's some reserves that we can combine and not need to have as much between the two. It's not every pot, but I think there is some. The other thing is that there should be some, although a board of 10 is not going to have as much of the savings as I was thinking there would be, in combining both for lack of a better term, the North Shore Board of Commissioners budget. There were some efficiencies that I'd identified in that. I think it was about $240,000. But some of that will not occur because of the two boards of five. But I'd have to go through and you come up with a plan for you guys to at least consider.
So is this where the funding conversation should be going, is kind of fine details at this point, or is it more about we need to establish new fire benefit charge for the organization and we need to, you know, what's the level of detail that we're supposed to be discussing at this point in our plan?
The plan itself will identify the funding sources, which will be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Benefit charge, and fire levy, but that the discussion, I think, in the ultimate development of our plan should be budget driven. Taking your public presentations, make it, maybe don't get it all. So it needs to be your right, but the actual decision will be making it, you want the benefit charge, tax levy.
Right.
Anything else that you say. So I think that the chief come back with a more detailed approach to here's the money we need, and this is how we think we can generate it for an RFA, with it guide your decision.
You do have a good point. I shouldn't just assume, but I think we're all on the same page that we need to have fire levy and a fire benefit charge. So from a strategic point, that's where I'm going to start.
Yes.
And at some point, we will need to define what that levy rate's going to start at, kind of like what we did with the lid lift of defining the 70 cents. Or is it going to be 70 cents or 80 cents or $1? Or, you know, you all will need to decide on what that is. But I need to prepare a budget so that you can understand, you know, because at some point the people are going to want to know, what's my equivalent levy rate? What's my fire levy rate going to be? What's my equivalent fire benefit charge rate going to be? And so that's downstream a bit because I need to develop that budget. But I think that we have an obligation to tell them, you know, what we think their levy rate's gonna do. And that's where that, you know, those reserves and everything will come into play as well. But you know, we should be thinking about whether or not the levy rate, if we want to set the fire levy rate at $1 or less. I've made it abundantly clear, in my opinion, to both boards. I think the fire benefit charge is a much more appropriate mechanism for getting revenues because it's tailored more to the risk of the structures and the needs, the emergency services needs. But setting, for example, though, if we set the new RFA fire levy rate at 50 cents and expect the fire benefit charge to take up, we will quickly get back to the situation that we're in North Shore of being at 60% with the fire benefit charge and having to look at a lid lift. So I would want to set, I'm just telling you strategically, I would want to set the levy rate at least at a number high enough to give us 10, 15 plus years before we would have to, you know, looking at average AV growth and all that before we would need to reset on the fire benefit charge again. I don't want to, again, that's a strategic decision that you'll have to make as to like, how far do we push it up? Again, I would want to not push it up too high or whatever level we think is a good number. Maybe it's 70 cents, like what we're trying to establish this August with North Shore. I'd have to, you know, figure it out, but a lot of that will depend on what our equivalent levy rate is going to be. For example, if let's just say it's $1.20, equivalent levy rate, and we go at 70 cents, and that means 50 cents equivalent fire benefit charge. I would want to forecast out, look at average CPI and what that budget's going to do, and average AV, and look how long that's going to take to tip that back up to 60%.
Yeah, I think that setting that all is contingent on what the budget looks like, right? So
absolutely,
we can't make those decisions until we have your numbers in front of us.
Agreed.
So I think what we don't want to do is go to the North Shore citizens, raise the levy rate and say, okay, we're asking for 70 cents on the dollar, and then come back with the RFA and have it be 80 or 90. Right? We want that to be very close.
Yeah, I would agree that would make sense. And I honestly think that around 70 cents is probably a good number. But I would want to, just like you said, I would want to develop that budget and be able to say, if the fire levy is at 70 cents, the fire benefit charge is going to be at 40, 50, 60, 30, 20, yeah, whatever number that is that we're going to have to generate to get the revenue to meet the budget. My problem with this is going to be that most of our costs are generated by COLAs for salaries, salary and benefits. We run 80-85%, in salary and benefits. So the June to June CPI won't come out until hopefully sometime in July, which will drive what 2025's budget will do. So my plan would be to look at the 2024 budget, mesh things together, and then look at and I can put an inflator, a 4%, a 5%, whatever we think CPI is going to be, because that'll drive. It's not all CPI. I mean, there's costs of goods and services and supplies and everything else, but if we put in an inflator, then I can look at what forecasted 2025 would be. But understand that we wouldn't have that until we actually set the budget for next year, and that won't be able to occur until we get the CPI numbers.
So practically speaking, we're looking at our meeting in July at best.
Well, I could do a 2024. I can look at all of the things I've talked about with reserves and the efficiencies of a combined board. And I can give you an estimate at what a combined RFA is in 2024 numbers. And then we can put an inflator in and to be able to forecast out, what our budget would look like for 2025. But we can also put in a guesstimate at AV too. Because that's between AV and if AV is flat and
Go down like it.
where I'm supposed to get some forecast numbers because of the King County EMS levy. I'm supposed to get some numbers here pretty quickly from a King County finance person. I don't know who it is, to give us an idea of what AV is going to do. We can also look at area reports, but those have been notoriously delayed over the previous years, so I haven't had a chance to use those in my budget prep. But we can take some guesstimates at what AV is going to do. We can do some guesstimates at what CPI is going to do to get an idea of what it's going to look like until we have those numbers. And then once we have those numbers, we can answer the questions that the people will be asking as to what the equivalent levy rate is going to be. My initial estimate that was with some of the savings from the board and having a 10-member board will take away some of those savings. I was thinking we could actually be probably close to what the North Shore rate is at $1.17, $1.18. But I can't tell you that with any certainty right now.
So when do you think that a preliminary budget could be combined? I mean, that tells us like if we're looking at July meeting or.
What's the June meetings? I
Put a
will
lot of pressure.
I will commit myself to trying to have something for you at the June meeting.
Okay.
Budget for June.
That will include reserves.
That'll include I will draft up a proposal for you all with a guesstimate on the budget and a guesstimate as to what we need to do with the reserves, because the reserves especially that's the board's decision. I'll give you some recommendations and then you guys can tell me that you're comfortable with it or you're not comfortable with it, and I can go from there. The budget will be mostly the budget because I'm going to take 2024's budget and I'm going to look at what we're budgeting for this year and try to figure out what that looks like for next year. Yeah, combined. There's not much to combine. That's why I think I can do this by June, because there's not much. It's really looking at the North Shore's Board of Commissioner budget and seeing, what the new, savings are going to be. And then combining and coming up with a plan for the reserves. I should be able to do that, within the next few weeks, I would think.
That'll include the facilities reserves that we have.
Correct.
Because there's work to be done.
Right. So, and we're upside down getting some progress on some of those things, so. But I can definitely have something for you guys.
You wanna throw capital in there too, or you wanna do that on another night?
Well, I don't think I can do,
Okay.
capital is gonna take quite a bit longer.
Okay.
But I can take a look at it.
You know,
I just don't
Let's say
don't
that
know.
for maybe July then, capital for July.
So, we'll see, yeah. Capital's gonna take. I need to get, I need to
Let's
get Matt.
try and target
Yeah.
July on this for capital.
That's a big,
If
that's a big one.
Is that okay with everybody else?
Yeah.
I can try.
Yeah.
I need to
Okay.
get some bandwidth for Hochstein.
See,
Yeah.
It's not on here, so
What are you looking for?
Hochstein. I gotta get bandwidth for him so that he can work on this too.
You know, there's not much else to tackle, really. Am I missing something, guys?
All right.
Ryan, you're making faces. Am I missing something? Amy?
Last meeting you had discussed 2 items, a timeline, so you all kind of knew your drop dates for completing this plan. And then you also had mentioned discussion of a name. for the-
Oh, yeah, the name.
Oh, you don't.
Yeah.
Your last one.
No, it's just, that'll be an interesting one. I think that really we have, if we're working backwards, are we looking for it's February or April of next year? Do you have a preference? Special elections are, I think, absolutely the way to go with fire department measures. We just like to be on, I like us to be on our own, doing our own, and people not focusing on a presidential, vote or a school board, well, there still could be school votes and stuff. But on our own is probably the way to go. It's a little more expensive for us that way. Do you have a preference on February
I
or
think
April?
we shoot for February, and if we can't, if we're looking like we're losing it, we have April to drop it to.
That'd be preferable, for looking at, potential long-term stuff too. But is there?
Seems you'd have to have it into the county mid-December.
Yep.
When, December?
Yeah, work back 90 days.
Okay.
If we keep progressing the way we're doing at meetings, I don't see a problem with it. We've got most of this hammered out. Now it's just finances.
That's what we need.
Finance is a name.
That's the next step.
That's what I was chuckling about, was the name.
We looked at the name, we're not, based on the name discussion, but is there any requirements for what has to be in it? They fire authority somewhere in there, there's no.
You would be a regional fire authority, but doesn't have to be.
You could,
Yeah.
In county regional fire authority.
I've seen most of them go back to like a fire department, something, whatever, fire department. So. Yeah,
So you get back to these, except for the timeline, you have other sections of the plan that are really written by the chief for the board of operations and services. We might just. These have to be done in November, there's a place of both districts take actions, might just kind of sketch out. Done with the board, but the 2 of you, just when you're gonna bring forward certain sections of the plan, so you can actually start bringing the draft plan. You got language to governance now, the other ones, the need statement. Formation authority is pretty straightforward, but the specific operational service ones, you might.
is that typical to bring different sections forward or a complete package?
I find it easier to bring different sections, but if you have the one plan document, but tonight we're gonna discuss. Section 8 of operation.
Okay.
And it keeps it clean that way when you do that.
So we target for February.
Okay.
And then if we can't make it by February, we run into snags and we'll push it out to April, but April's.
I can't imagine that, that we can't make February, considering what we have left to decide. I mean, you guys took care of the biggest one tonight with governance. the rebranding, you know, I don't know, how would you like to go? Would you, we can, we can ask for input. We're gonna get all over the place. Um,
I would still like to have input. We can weed through it.
yeah, I can
I mean,
certainly,
ultimately, it's our decision.
So
isn't it?
should we put that on the website?
I would, I think the easiest way would actually be to, well, I think for internally, I can just send an email out, but we also want to open up potentially for, you know, citizens or residents to weigh in.
I don't think
Potentially.
We opened it wide open to citizens. I think we internally, we come up with a few options.
And then.
And then present it. Okay, well, I can send out an email,
5 choices.
yeah,
Well,
narrow it down to
Doug's online.
2 or 3.
Let me point to him. Doug's online. He might know of some of the choices the guys have.
I can, well,
Well-
I can share with you some of the
Yeah.
thoughts that are out there.
No, but I mean, I think you're right, that if we're gonna send out the email to firefighters and do that, that's fine. But let's keep it pretty internal so that
Okay,
it doesn't get.
I'll send out an email. I can do that. I can do that tonight or
respond to
tomorrow.
Somebody
Yeah,
in your organization.
In a deadline.
I think that, I would like to, I'll give them 2 or 3 weeks so that I have enough time to collect and then share with you all in preparation for the June meeting.
Well, then we can
Yeah.
take a choice.
Good
with that.
Even when we were talking about the shoreline North Shore, that's why I know there's some of the names that are out there already, because there was already some of that talk, you know, already for the ILA. But yeah, okay, we'll see.
That's the best way to do it.
That's the beauty of.
Actually, I will tell you, I'll tell you what I think. I think
Throw 'em out.
the one that I've heard a few times that I think is, well, it could be North Shore, because that is a combination of North Shore and shoreline. But you're gonna laugh, is back to North Lake. And it could be North Lake Fire Department or something like that. The only thing is that there's baggage from that, from a little bit from the training consortium, the North Lake Training Consortium that was from 15-20 years, whatever it was, years ago. But there's not very many people left that have that baggage, so I think we could probably refresh on that. But that's the one that I've heard a bit more. I've heard everything from the fire department of North King County to North King County Fire Department to North End Fire Department to North. It could, you know, we could do a Puget Sound thing. We could be Puget Sound Fire Department, North End. You know, there's all over the place.
That's
So,
been done. What did I came up with.
You came up with Shore Lake,
Shore to Lake.
Lake Shore.
Or, yeah, there you go.
I don't know.
That sounds better.
I would like, if we'll see what how the feedback we get coming back. I would prefer to stay away from anything that has King County in it, because that potentially limits us if Bothell is interested. I know we're not talking about Bothell, but if
No.
we are staying open to, you know, that would potentially distance us from anybody that's living in Snohomish County, and we're also serving Woodway, you know, which is Snohomish County too. So I would prefer that, but really it'll be interesting to see what gets the most traction or sticks on the wall.
Is there anything else we'd like to discuss tonight? It's quiet, Tyler.
A good meeting, though. I think
I have some work.
We're moving. We're moving along.
I love it. It is. 6:05. Rod?
Well, I got Brian and Doug that are listening, so I'll probably have some names already sent to me by the time I get home.